In this video, we look at evaluating piecewise functions. So first of all, let's talk about what a piecewise function is. A function that is defined piecewise means that it is defined according to different rules depending on the input x. To evaluate it, what we do is we determine which part of the domain the given x value is in, and then plug that x value into the appropriate expression. We have an example here, g of x equals 3x plus 2 if x is less than -1, x plus 1 quantity squared minus 1 if x is greater than or equal to -1 but less than or equal to 2, and 1/2 x plus 1 if x is greater than 2. So you can see that we have three different rules for g depending on what our value x is. So what we want to do is for each of the values we're trying to determine, figure out where that x value falls and then use the appropriate definition for g of x for that x value. So the first one is g of -1. So I'll go ahead and write this over here. So first I have g of -1. So remember what's in the parentheses, that's the x value. So I would have x equals -1 is in the interval and I have three choices here. Is it less than -1? No. Is it greater than or equal to -1 and less than or equal to -2? Yes. So it's in the interval -1 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 2. -1 for x would fall into that category. So what we'll do is we'll use g of x equals this middle definition, x plus 1 quantity squared minus 1. So I'm using the equation that corresponds with x being between -1 and 2 inclusive. So I would have g of -1 equals -1 plus 1 quantity squared minus 1. And I just want to evaluate that. So I'm going to have -1 plus 1 is 0. So this would give me 0 squared minus 1, which is -1. So my answer is going to be g of -1 equals -1. So my final answer for that would be -1. That's the output. Okay, let's look at the next one. We have g of 0. So if I do g of 0, I have to look at that x value, x equals 0, and which interval is it in? So x equals 0 is in the interval, and then I look at my three choices. Is it less than -1? No. Is it between -1 and 2 inclusive? Yes. So it's in the interval -1 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 2. 0 would be in that interval. So I use the corresponding equation. So I will use g of x equals x plus 1 quantity squared minus 1. So I will have g of 0 equals, parentheses, 0 plus 1 quantity squared minus 1, which is equal to 1 squared, so 1 minus 1, which is 0. So I would have g of 0 equals 0. Now in this example, notice the output is tending to be the same as the input. That is just a coincidence. That is not always the case. So you would use whatever output you get as your final answer. All right, now let's look at the last one, g of 3. So we will have g of 3, and we look at the x value of 3. X equals 3 is in the interval. And then you look at your 3 options. It's in the interval x is greater than 2, because 3 is greater than 2. So we're going to use the third relationship. G of x equals 1/2 x plus 1. So g of 3 is going to equal 1/2 times 3 plus 1, which is 3/2 plus 1, or a total of 5/2. So I would get g of 3 is equal to 5/2. And that would be my answer. So with a piecewise function, it's really important to look at which part of the domain, which interval of the domain does the given value fall into, and then choose the appropriate part of your function to plug it into.